Hello, everyone. It's Seth, and with me today I have Clyde, the YouTuber.
Hey,
And today we're going to be talking about, I feel, a subject that Clyde is a bit more passionate about, but I do have a lot of thoughts as well. And I feel as though many of you in the comments will probably have your own opinions on it, and that is about the story of Death Note after the death of L. So, it is probably one of the biggest turning points of the entire series. And I actually watched it with one of my friends back in the day. And my friend likes to low key spoil themselves. They like to just sort of like learn as much about the plot as fast as possible without actually watching it sometimes. And because they read the reviews of other people saying, "Oh, Death Note falls off right after that, don't watch anymore," they actually just like, "Oh, I'm not really interested. I think after L's dead, the series is over." It's like, you don't know that. Like, what are you talking about? And it was because they heard from other people how bad they think the series is after the death of L. So it's just such a commonly held opinion that it stops people who haven't even seen it yet from even continuing the story. Like, that's how crazy it gets with this community in terms of this subject. And I have my own thoughts on things I like about it, say the L successors, and things that I think would be better. And I think that Clyde is a better representative of what most people feel about it, and is probably better at illustrating or elaborating on that than I really am. So, Clyde, what do you think that people really dislike about it, or what are your main thoughts about after the death of L that really is just like, this is just not the same vibe, this is just not appropriate, or it's really just sort of dissatisfying maybe that it continues this way?
I believe out of pretty much every major, mainline, super mainstream anime, Death Note's got probably one of the most notorious midway points of any series. Not the ending, not the start, the actual midway point of the series. It's pretty common, as Seth said, that you will meet a lot of people that have seen Death Note, where they will say they either know that it gets bad at Al's death, or they dropped it because of how much the vibe changes. Now, upon working on the latest Death Note video of Seth's, with him, with the whole editing stuff, I did come to realize that the manga definitely conveys the second part of the story a lot better, a lot faster, and a lot more coherent than I think the anime does. So the anime's additions are pretty good because it adds more sort of fluff to the scenes and a lot more like exaggeration with the way that it actually is animated. Like, one good thing about Death Note is it's sort of computerized scenes weren't to the degree where it was sticking out like a giant, CGI character. It actually added a lot of good stuff like, as an example, a scene like when, it's panning around Light's room and we're seeing all the different cameras and microphones placed, or any of like the Alan Light stuff as they're panning across the screen with really good animation. The anime does a good job at doing those sort of things, and definitely the audio and visual part. I guess the actual pacing of part 2 does slow down quite a bit when Al does die. And I would say that probably the biggest reason why that does occur so heavily in Death Note, whether or not it's good or bad, is because the series does start with the cat and mouse sort of chase of Al chasing Light. They're both sort of unaware of each other until a certain point, and then Light becomes aware of who he is and so on. And you're invested in this story where it starts off with a teenager in high school who we assume and see to be quite intelligent, and within the first episode or the first chapter, he picks up this book where if you write anyone's name in it, they can die. Now, the sort of result of how they die is obviously, relatively limited, but it is explained to be usually just heart attacks and so on. Sort of real simple things. But it's like, okay, well, this character starts using it, and then now it's like, oh, okay, what's he gonna do with it? What's the goal here for the character? So he has, this grandiose plan to change the world and sort of, use true justice in his view, and gets baited in the first 2 chapters by Al to sort of reveal where he is, which was sort of indicative of his maturity at that age. But as the series progresses, and we do get to see Light and Al, have their battle, which is not actually a physical one, as Seth pointed out in his video, it's more of a mental one, you become really invested in, is he going to get caught, or is he going to kill Al, or what's going to happen? And that's basically the main thing of the story. It's the Death Note and Al, those are the 2 main things. And then once it's reached, and it does happen, it sort of slows down as if you're in a car that's gone from 100 miles per hour down to 30. And that was sort of a similar issue that people did have when Aizen in Bleach, spoilers, everyone probably knows about this now, it's 15 years old now, but basically, once Aizen is defeated, it has a similar sort of effect on Bleach, where that series feels like, okay, well, the Fullbring arc's a bit slow, it's slice of life. Why am I as invested in this as I would be in Aizen? Like, he was the main big dog that came after Byakuya. He essentially did a bit of a Death Note situation where he fooled everybody, and turns out he was behind the scenes of everything from Rukia's execution to everything else going on in the Soul Society arc. Even it gets later revealed that other things 100 years ago were connected to him, and understandably that is sort of similar to Death Note, where once L is reached, it does actually slow down quite a bit. Now, I guess, Seth, you have like a better opinion of Part 2 than most people would. I feel like after reading some of the chapters to assist with the video, I did enjoy a lot of the Mellow and Nier stuff a lot more. More so Mellow, but in general, it feels like when you read that part of the series, it's actually a lot better than it was, say, maybe in the anime for most people. But I do understand that the pacing of it does considerably slow down once it's reached.
I guess, like, for me, I've read stuff outside of the story, right? So, for me, my perspective is a bit different because I've analyzed Death Note in a lot of its entirety, right? Like, I read a lot of why did Oba and Obata do this? You know, I was reading interviews about why Obata drew Nier with a toy robot. You know what I mean? Like, I learned really their whole thought process about everything. You know, I even learned Watari's original name was going to be Shadow. And then the editor's like, that is so cringe and contrived. Like, why would you call him Shadow? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and that's why Watari's like all dark and like ominous when he appears, because he's gonna be Shadow, right? So I've looked a lot into like why they did what they did. And so the big thing for Oba and Obata is that they were really they were being as creative as possible. And they felt that, at least this is what Oba himself said, he says off the dome, because this isn't a scripted video. He said something akin to, well, what would be better than L versus Light in a 1v1, right? Like, that is the 1v1. There is nothing better than that. Like, that is the pinnacle of the 1v1 genre, right? That is your Goku versus Vegeta, right? Like, there isn't really any better 1v1 than that. So what he thought in his head was the next one isn't going to be a 1v1. It's going to be 1v1v1, right? It was going to be 3 teams competing for a goal. And that's what would make it different, right? So you have Mellow, he's like the gang member. He's willing to do whatever he wants, you know, commit crime, do all this crazy stuff. Nier, he's more of like the detective. Nier kind of represents like that cold embodiment of the government kind of looming over Light, you know, that cold authority kind of coming after him, trying to arrest him. Whereas Mellow is kind of like that hyperactive, prideful, you know, crime mob boss side that wants to kind of conquer the world coming after him. And so Light is then split between his 2 personalities as well. You know, one of his personalities where he wants to be the best detective, right? He wants to be the next L, because he took a lot of pride in L and becoming the next one. Many people don't know that. So he fights Nier in that regard. And then the other side's like, I'm going to do whatever crime it takes to take over this world and make it how I wish. And that's when he gets split over to Mellow. And that's why when Mellow and Nier, I'm not going to lie, Mellow and Nier bully him in the beginning of part 2. That's why he's like, I'll show you why L is number 1, right? Because he's L now. And Mellow, I'll show you why Kira is the ruler of this world, right? That's why he sort of has like that lock-in moment. And he's like, all right, I'm going to go crazy, right? And he gets excited because they challenge him in different ways than L did, if that makes sense. They sort of split him up and do different things with him. And that's what Oba was kind of going for. Because Oba's like, sure, you could have like Light versus Nier 1v1 or something, and like maybe it'd be kind of interesting, but realistically, like, L is the best 1v1, so I'm gonna have a bunch of crazy shenanigans going on. Now, I have a follow-up for what I think particularly should change even with that concept. I think that realistically speaking, everyone can agree, you know, most stories, they're written, like, look at George R.R. Martin writing. Like, he's taken his time writing his stories, right? Even Squid Game, right? Squid Game, 3 years in the making, is still didn't even complete a season 2. Most of these stories, man, they got a lot of time to write and get all their little things down pat. But Death Note, that was weekly. You know, a lot of people don't know this. The Saiyan Saga, there was no... It's not like the manga went on hiatus while he played. Nope, that was right after Piccolo's defeated. Next week, Raditz appeared. People don't know that. Raditz appeared next week after Piccolo's defeated. So a lot of these weekly...
That is actually... Wait, real quick, just to interject, that's actually pretty crazy.
Yeah, like, Dragon Ball Z is not a thing. It's not a thing. It was just Dragon Ball. So that the next week, Raditz appeared. People don't know that. So these weekly stories, they're not as well thought out as people with like 10 years of hindsight watching like dozens of YouTube videos.
Or
like,
it does also show you how crazy some of these Japanese mangaka are at the same time too. Because it's like doing that on the fly, just to interject with this actually. Yeah. The thing about Death Note, and you might be about to say this, is that this isn't a battle shonen. This is a how do we keep people interested in characters thinking and talking.
Now, I'll elaborate this real quick. So, my defenses of part 2 are that I think Nier and Mellow have narratively redeeming qualities for what they mean for Light in particular. So they don't just mean things for L, they mean things for Light, as I elaborated earlier. But I think that they have different qualities that L doesn't. So, for instance, Nier openly hates Light. All right, so if any of you have ever been in a Discord, and maybe there's some or maybe you've just been online, you just been on a Call of Duty match as an example, and there's just some punk ass dude just talking to you the whole time because he just hates you that bad. But maybe he's low key got hands. You know what I mean? Maybe this squeaker, you're fighting a squeaker, and they low key have hands. They're actually giving you some problems. This is what Nier is to Light. Nier is basically the Xbox Live squeaker that doesn't ever let up on the gas. Because he's basically a child, right? It's like a kid talking to him on Xbox Live. And that's why Light's he's worse than L. Because, L is trying to be an adult. He's trying to be subtle and nuanced. Nier's yo, do you guys really not think Light is Kira? Are you guys dumb as hell or what? Maybe you're a bunch of elementary schoolers? Nier is just packing them up. And that's sort of the dichotomy. He has that Xbox Live confrontational talking type intelligence, I guess you want to call it that. Whereas L was a bit more subtle, surprisingly, because you would think that Nier should be more emotionless than L, but it was really the other way around. And then Mellow is just completely off the rails entirely. He's launching missiles to get the Death Note off the scene. L wasn't doing that. L was much more subtle and calculated. And even Nier as well. Nier's maybe I can skedaddle and flip the notebook slightly. But Mellow's I'm gonna kidnap your wife. If you don't give me that book. You know what I mean? It was totally night and day. So the characters, in my opinion, have certain qualities that Light didn't. And if you were into the Death Note community, if you look at the meme culture, there's a lot of memes, especially about Nier kind of having an Xbox headset or basically talking to Light, right? That was sort of a lot of those memes that go back and forth back in the day. But I think for me, that's where it gets redeemable. It's the first. Oba wasn't trying to replace L. He was just trying to make something new that was interesting. 2, for Light, it's slightly different. It's supposed to be the overlooming cold-hearted government authority that he's conquering, as well as the rebellious, chaotic side trying to control the world through his own freedom, Mellow. And then 3rd, I feel as though they had much more childish, confrontational, and emotional strategies than L might have. Now, L did have the more confrontational strategy with the TV thing, obviously, but I think just more so in terms of raw dialogue, maybe. But I do have things that I think could have been done better, obviously, with my YouTuber 10-year hindsight brain, right? There are things that I think would be better, but that's my rant about the things I do like, I suppose. And so I'll just leave that section there because I've been rambling, but yeah, you can go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, the more the merrier. It is an interesting conversation. So I guess to add to what you said, something to look at with Nier and Mellow that makes them different when they come into the story is that Nier philosophically isn't open-minded to any idea of accepting Light. He is absolutely against him in every regard. Like, there's no leeway. He's like, no, we have to get this guy. Like, I don't care how much you might argue with me about it. Like, we're going to get him. And that's what's being said even at the end when Light gets caught. He's making a pretty solid argument. Like, look at the world around us now. It's way better than it was in the past. Like, I've actually made a difference. And Nier's just like, I don't care. Like, literally just don't care. Muted, get out the VC. Like, it's just, it's literally just that.
Yeah, nice. Thanks for your... It was literally like debate gooning. It was like, yeah, thanks for conceding. Anyway, yeah, muted and kicked. Like...
Yeah, derailing ad nauseum. Like, and so Nier and Mellow, right? The difference with these two characters to Al is very obviously, well, they have major different roles, but it's a little bit more particular. So again, Nier philosophically doesn't care about the idea of playing ball with Light at all. His goal is just to catch him. Mellow is so unhinged and does things to the degree where he actually commits crimes that Light considers him in multiple different pieces of dialogue.
Not just like, your little romantic, like, maybe the detective does a little crime to catch the criminal, like, L hired a thief? Whoa! It's like, Mellow is committing full-scale, like, I'm gonna be real, like, actual just terrorism. Like, you know what I mean? Like, to do his goal. Yeah.
Kidnappings, gun stuff. I mean, he puts a gun to Lidna, in like one of the first scenes we see of those two together.
He's threatening the president over the phone. It's like,
He's aiming his gun at Nier and everyone else in that room, like, and Nier's like, chill, it's all good. Like, he clearly is down to do some wild stuff, but that's what makes Nier... So, I guess I should say this, right? This is a major point that I would always make about why I feel like the second part of Death Note does feel so considerably different, and the vibe changes to the degree where, I'm not going to lie to you, I did lose a lot of interest during the first time that I watched Death Note because my main attraction was, well, Al is the goal. Once Al's reached, it slows down. Inevitably, we're probably going to see Light get caught by somebody else or die of old age or who knows what happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would say the thing about Nier, which is probably why he isn't as palatable as Al being Al as the main attraction, is because Nier is realistically, to a lot of people, a shorter Al with similar mannerisms, but white hair, black hair, white hair, shorter, both got really weird, like, how would you say, mannerisms, social sort of reactions to people. But something really cool about Nier as just a general way to break down his character is that, and Light points this out too, he's like, Nier won't kill people for the sake of testing out the Death Note. Like, he doesn't have the balls to do that, but Al would. And that's what makes sort of Al, Mellow, and Nier all different in three different ways. Mellow will commit crimes, he's unhinged. Light's actually scared of him to the point where he almost slips up and gets his father aware that he really is Kira by saying, bro, you've got to write this guy's name down in the book, man. Like, and then... so there's like that aspect.
He actually had him pissing himself, like, even when his dad was dying, The
anime scene, too, like, shows, like, a really dramatic close-up of him crying like crazy, too, and his dad's like, as his dad's, like, eyes are going, like, losing their life, like, he's literally just like, I actually can't believe it, and then it just cuts out, like, he's like, it's like he becomes, more aware, but, so, anyway, with that in mind, right, there's a couple of pieces of dialogue where Light does, even in one of the remaining chapters of the series, he's sitting in the car and he's like, yeah, we don't know what Mallow's going to do. He's so unpredictable. Like, he's still fearful of wherever he could be, what he's up to even in that moment. And a general thing again, Mellow is super unpredictable, very scary, much more hands-on, practical, will actually leave his quarters or whereabouts, unlike Nier, which is something you made a good point of in your video.
Yep.
And then again with Nier, he is different to Al, where he's very firm on catching Light, but he also won't go against his own philosophical values, and that's a really, I think, redeeming quality in a way that I feel like a lot of people should really appreciate, because he won't kill like what Al did. Al killed the guy, it was Taylor, right, at the very start, the prisoner, which he put on TV.
Lindell Taylor.
Light. Yeah. So, like, he's willing to do stuff like that. Light points that out. He thinks that Nier's a because of that. Turns out the whole time he's getting absolutely, like, he's getting cooked and he doesn't even know it while he's having this rant in his head. And I think that is probably a good way that a lot of people should look at it, is that they aren't just meant to be replacements of Al. They're actually characters that legitimately, both writing and what they do in the story, is very much different to Al. The only thing that Nier has that's really similar to Al, like, this is more realistically here, not just the physical appearance and mannerisms, is that they both have the Battle of Pride.
Yep.
and that is something that Nier just can't get away from. I mean, even Mellow to some degree also does, but he accepts in the moment that he's like, all right, I know I'm going to have to die to do this, but it is worth it to catch this guy. And yeah, I guess, you know, without being biased towards how the series does shift away from L, if more people sort of appreciated those aspects, I think a lot more people would probably like Nier and Mellow. And I know there's a lot of Death Note fans that do, like, don't get this wrong. It's more like, I'm sure every Death Note fan has heard that at one stage a friend or someone that you know has been like, yeah, I just stopped watching after L, so...
Yeah.
Hopefully that's some good additions to in defense of these two.
Yeah, Adult Nier, I'm not really a fan of Adult Nier, but he's obviously a lot different than L as well.
He looks crusty.
Yeah, he's crusty. He goes, you know, if Nier was like, he's playing Call of Duty squeaking at you, like, he goes full just Discord admin when he's an adult. Like, I don't know what happened to him. But, I guess this is where I'd get more into now what I think could have been better. So... I don't really agree that the story, for one, the story didn't need to be, you know, a free-for-all. I don't think it needed to change. We've seen time and time again that a story could just do the same thing with a different vibe, and it still works. So, for instance, you don't need to have Nier and Mellow as two different people coming for Light. You could just have one guy again. I think that's where we disagree. And I think that he learned his lesson. Surprisingly, in his sequel, he made a story called Platinum End. And in that story, he made the final villain literally who should have came after L. And it's the guy who came after was an old guy, probably like 40 or 50. And this was the smartest man on the planet who became interested in the weird that was happening in the story before that. And then as he got invested, he became a serious problem, right? So that's how he sort of like made up for what he did with Death Note. He's like, yeah, I could have just made a guy smarter or different than L, realistically. Like, or he could have had the smartest person in the world appear. Because L was one of the smartest, realistically. He wasn't the smartest. Although the analysis is kind of like weirdly translated on it. So you'd have the smartest person in the world. He's not a detective, right? So he can't do detective work like L can. But he's smart in every other quality beyond L, right? So he would get onto Light and battle Light in a totally different way than just a detective. But the way I would personally do it is, I told this to Clyde, and this isn't to say that I'm more creative or that it's a better idea. I think that Death Note's fine as it is. I guess if I just had to, like, I don't know, like, hypothetically speaking,
do a what if alternate ending kind of thing.
Maybe you could break it up into 3 arcs as well, where it's still like a 1v1. So I think, personally speaking, what should have happened is that I think that Mellow should have been someone disconnected from Whammy's house. I don't think Mellow should have been from Whammy's house, because I think that the world building would have been better if not. I think that Nier could still appear in the story, but just maybe in an arc after or something like that. And then he would be from Whammy's house. And it's like, yeah, they tried to raise successors or something. And then you would imply it. But I think Mellow should have been someone entirely disconnected. And I think that Mellow should have been an insane crime boss or some type of underworld entity that went into hiding because L found out something about him, right? And so because L knew something about him, and you would imply it was found out through like an unlucky circumstance or something like that. Not even because of L's intelligence or something like that, but he's hiding from L because L found out something about him. And the moment L dies, he thinks he can just take over the world again or something like that. You could even imply he's the one who would have started World War III, something like that, right? Which would have made L into who he was. And so this Mellow figure would have been this hyper genius underground mob boss who does not care about anything, right? Like the reason he's willing to like kidnap people, because he's already the criminal. He's going to start World War III or something for his plans. He does not care. And so you would almost put Light in a situation where he would literally have to save the world. You know what I mean? Like against an entity who does not care. He like the only reason he was hiding at all, it's like some sealed Moro Dragon Ball entity. Like he's only hiding away because these people were around and they knew some stuff about him. And if you did that, he would just have infinitely more aura. You know what I mean? Like, he wouldn't just...
Yeah, maybe added to that. Maybe make him, like, have this be revealed by someone connected to Al post-death that states that this is someone who, though he never wielded a Death Note, he's actually someone that got away from Al, or he was one of Al's cases he had yet to figure out to make him have aura when he comes in. And it's sort of the same as what you said, but I feel like that could work. And here's something really important. So by disconnecting Mellow from Whammy's house, right, it takes away that sort of gimmicky role of, okay, there's an orphanage with like 50 million super hyper geniuses with 200 IQs kind of thing. I think having him separate is a great idea, because if he's his own entity, he comes in as a third party and then Nier is the second party involved.
Yeah, and then, like I said, if he is disconnected, you could even have Nier be introduced because Mellow is too much for Light to handle. Right? So just in the same way that L couldn't really handle Mellow because he's too unpredictable, he's too crazy, he's still on the level, but he doesn't play any of the games, right? It's sort of like, you know, like how Kid Buu in Dragon Ball, too insane to really handle normally. Something like that. He's too crazy, too smart, so they can't play this Battle of Pride game. None of Light's nuance or any of that stuff works. And you could then introduce Nier, this is L's real successor, and then Light has to work with him to deal with Mellow, right? They have to 2v1 Mellow to take him out, and then you could have Light handle Nier at the end. Then you would have him 1v1 Nier, and then because of the team-up that they did against Mellow, Nier would then be informed more about Light's situation, and then it would flow more naturally, right? And then Nier just wouldn't be like one of many little brats from Whammy's house. He would be the successor, right? He wouldn't just be one of many. He would just be the kid L chose that could succeed him. You'd hype him up. Yeah, this kid has more potential than L, blah, blah, blah. Give him all those statements that he has more potential than L, but he's just young, right? So he's young, so maybe he has, maybe he hasn't. And then have him help take down Mellow, who's just an unstoppable threat if they don't team up. And then Nier comes in. And I think, personally, I'm writing a Wattpad right now, fan fiction, but this is just how I would salvage the characters, in my opinion, right? Just personally speaking, how I would salvage them. Now, I know there's a lot of people that like kind of the more spurgy, like, I guess sort of like cutesy moments that the characters have. Like, you can't really have, like, Nier and Mellow cracking jokes too much the same way. If, you know, Mellow is just the World War III psychopath. Maybe Nier talking on Xbox Live would be a bit harder. But, you guys know what I mean. Like, it would redeem the stoicism, maybe.
So, circling back to the Discord idea, it would be, like, very hard to add in a lot of comedy or even, like, lighthearted stuff, because can you honestly imagine the stress, like, those two would be waking up to every single day? Especially because they don't really know, like, what could come out of nowhere, so, like...
Bro, I imagine like the psycho Mellow would just kill Light's family or something, just something crazy, you know what I mean? Like, maybe it'd be too grim for the story.
Well, imagine if he, like, one of Mellow's main goals in this hypothetical would very likely be, like, I need to get my hands on him physically, like, I need to actually get him, and, like, that's probably, like, how it would go, and then there may be, like, a more of a physical encounter.
Yeah, like, he would be, like, a force of nature that, you know, I guess you could say it's sort of like the other side of, like, Light's Death Note thing, where he's, like, seeking to break the law and control people by force. Mellow would also be trying to control and defeat Light by force, right? Like, it wouldn't be... I don't know, it's just an idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always a good hypothetical. It's interesting, too, reading through the Q&As during the preparation for the video. And to be specific, guys, it's the ranking the Death Note characters video. So if you're watching this, you know, there's like 30,000, 50,000 people watching this. Do us a favor, go rewatch that video. It was a combined effort, and it's probably the best Death Note video we've both worked on together. But anywho, during the production of that video, I read one of the Q&As, and you're obviously aware of this too, but there was a comment between the author and the artist where they were talking about, did they even really need to kill Al at the stage that they did? And I think they actually had considerations about not doing it, but they also wanted the story to sort of transition in a different way, and that does make sense. Like, it's both a good and bad thing, because if you actually sort of read more between the lines and look at what makes Part 2 different to the Al stuff, it can be very redeemable. I actually know, too, there's a lot of Death Note fans that actually love part 2. They actually love the way that the series both starts and finishes. So don't get me wrong, but this is more for the crowd of the, I guess, the vocal minority who are very like, I think the series falls off after Al. But, you know, I had this idea years ago that you could have like this alternative ending, but I have a follow-up to it, so hear me out on this. Basically, during the extra scene of Light, which is, I actually believe it's anime only, where he's at the funeral and he's at Al's grave, manically laughing his ass off, and then he sort of snaps back to reality. Having the series sort of end at that moment as some sort of alternative ending would be such a dark and gritty, clean series if it truly does end with Al, because at the end of the day, what was the main goal? It was Al. So if you have like some black screen series ends right there kind of thing, then they would be able to do like sort of what if scenarios. People during the early 2000s would have been hassling Shonen Jump and the artist and the author. Hey, what happened to Light afterwards? Like, you know, what was his fate? Did he die? Like, did he get caught? Like, you know, did he rule the world? Like, so many things that they would have done.
I feel as though another reason they didn't do it is because if L was just like killed by the Death Note, like let's say they just had like a long drawn out 20 more chapters of going back and forth. Light kills L, writes his name down in the Death Note. It might be strangely not narratively fitting if that happens. Like, I think one reason that Obata is so like near cheated is because if I was Oba, I would have near cheat to give Light a taste of his own medicine, because he cheated to beat L. Realistically, like, you know, they're equal, and then he basically cheats, right? He manipulates someone who's not as intelligent as L to then basically go God mode and then kill him. If Nier did that to Light, he manipulates someone not as smart as Light to then break character and then reveal himself. That would make total sense. But I do think that there's like a weird sense of like this weird war of attrition. Light somehow weasels out a slight win, and then it might diminish L's character as well. Like, it might feel weird. I don't know how to explain it. Like, I'm thinking about it. Maybe I'm too writer brain, but when I'm thinking about it, it feels kind of like contrived or edgy. Weirdly, it feels almost less contrived for Light to just like get desperate and cheat than for the, you know, the long drawn out, you know, battle. But that's just my opinion, I guess.
That's sort of a point then that actually is sort of the sad reality about the Death Note verse, especially for Light, is that obviously, since the very start, Ryuk made it clear that he is neither an ally or an enemy of Light's. Now, some can argue that he sort of is when he wants to be an ally, but there is no, like, reality for Light where he would have ever truly won, because Ryuk makes it clear, he's like, now that you're caught, I'm not sitting around while you're in jail. Understandable, right? He doesn't want to sit there for a whole life sentence until he naturally passes away. He actually did the humane thing by killing him with the Death Note at the very end.
Yeah.
However, I don't think there is a reality where Light gets to win and he gets to live until he's 80 while doing what he's doing, because if Ryuk ever gets bored, he might just write his name in the book at some stage. He might be like, dude, you're not in the same sort of stuff that you were doing when it came to Al and Mellow and these guys. Like, you've clearly won. You're just gonna idly do this until you're an old man and pass. Like, this is nowhere near as entertaining. And that's what's crazy, is that Ryuk's whole sort of little perspective is this is just something fun for him. Like, it's a TV show, because he had nothing better to do in the afterlife or the Shinigami realm. And I guess, you know, added to that, Light losing this, and this might be a bit of common sense, but for those who maybe don't know, I guess, like, it might also be a good thing for the author to sort of show, like, okay, Light's whole character becomes unhinged. Like, at the start, he's wishful thinking, he wants to change the world, make it a better place, and honestly, there's an argument to be made that he did. However, the whole, like, mass murdering thing and so on, I guess they didn't really want to push that idea of the quote, bad guy winning, because, dude, Light, alright, what Light did to Naomi, I started to sort of sympathize with certain things that Light was doing. I was like, you know, it'd be kind of hard to avoid wanting to, like, make a change if you have the Death Note, but seeing the way he does up stuff in the series, he was not a good person. Like,
not
he
at
really
all.
wasn't good.
No. It was bad. He was like, dude, he was like cackling that like this girl whose husband he like murdered is like depressed, and like it's weird when you think about it. Like, it is not, like, I don't know.
The biggest thing was this, when he brandishes the phone and he's like, wait, didn't you want to speak to my father? It's like, you didn't need to do that, bro.
That's weird. Yeah, that's weird.
That was so That was bad. So
it also shows how much Naomi was pressuring him too, because he's like being weird about it. Like he's kind of like rubbing it in. Like obviously,
yeah,
he was being pressured and he was like living it up now. But I guess as a little wrap up, there is a movie called and a book called "L Changed the World," and in that book we see what happened if Light didn't cheat. And in that hypothetical, there was a few things that they were planning. So. For one, in the interviews, I guess this is important to bring up too, so there's two more things, and then we'll wrap it up. But the first thing is that Oba did think about how Light and L would fight if it did continue. Apparently, it was something along the lines of manipulating Weddy to install cameras, or manipulate the cameras around L's building to then reveal the face of Watsuri. And then, by killing Watsuri and manipulating Watsuri, Misa would eventually see L's face somehow, right? That was sort of the idea. But in L Change the World, Light doesn't cheat, and then L basically wins. He convicts Light and throws him back into a cell, and then Light kills himself with the Death Note in his watch. And then, because L can never convict him or objectively prove he's Kira, because Light dies in a Kira-like way, then L can never solve the case and loses the case. So Light dies, but L loses. And that's how it would have ended if Rem didn't step in the movie. So those are two other strange hypotheticals. I kind of don't mind the whole, like, Light dies, but L loses. Kind of interesting, I guess.
Yeah.
That being said, that's really all there is to say. I'm curious what you guys would have liked about the Death Note ending. What would you guys have liked for part 2? Personally, I do like the whole just disconnect Mellow, make him a little bit more imposing, make Nier the successor rather than a successor, and make him sort of like, you know, someone that that has the potential to be above L or something like that. Give him a little bit more aura, maybe. But other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to check out that Death Note ranking video. We put a lot of effort into it, one of the best videos we've ever made. And other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching. Until next time.
Yeah, guys, listen, if you want more videos like this, I feel a lot more mentally snappy today because I actually slept properly. If you want more of these, like, podcast-style collaborations on the second channel with Seth and I, let us know. Simply just give it a like, subscribe to this channel, the specific, you know, secondary Seth channel. Let us know in the comments your thoughts on the whole topic itself. This is something that I think every Death Note fan has had some form of a debate over in private. Seth and I have spoken about it plenty of times, especially while producing Death Note content together, but, that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed my thoughts. Hope you guys want to see more of these. We have plenty more videos like this actually in mind. But as I said, give the video a like, subscribe to this channel, and have yourselves a great day.